While there's been a lot of concern about the decline of bee populations around the world, new research shows things are actually getting worse. America's agricultural landscape is now almost 50 times more toxic to bees than it was 25 years ago, according to new research. So joining me now is Professor of Environmental Sciences at the University of Guelph, Peter Kevin. But Professor, thank you so much for being here. Here's the evident question. Why are things getting worse for bees instead of better, despite all the attention that they've been getting over the past few years?
Well, it's not just bees. It's all insects that are included in this new idea of the insect apocalypse, and bees have been the canary in the coal mine with respect to that. The reason is because we're still using particularly toxic chemicals to insects and to other things across broad areas of landscapes. And this is the sort of thing that Rachel Carson originally brought attention to with organochlorine pesticides back in the 1960s. Was not so much the chemicals themselves, but the way in which they were used across broad areas of landscapes in large tonnages. Now, the new pesticides, the new insecticides which are used, are much more toxic than were the old organochlorine pesticides. So the weight of pesticides which is being put down is much less than it was in the 1960s and 1970s, but the toxic units put down into the landscape are much greater.
Professor, this year Health Canada passed new restrictions on the use of some of the more harmful pesticides. Will that affect what you were just discussing, and how do we compare to our southern neighbors?
Well, our southern neighbors, we have much more data from our southern neighbors, and we have much more data from Europe as well. In Canada, we're having difficulty generating the data because we don't have the scientific expertise nor the funding. And in Canada, we have to rely a great deal on commercial sector funding in order to get work off the ground in Canada. So it's very difficult to know, but certainly my suspicion would be, in as much as we're using the same pesticides in the same sorts of manners as they are being used in the United States, we're probably suffering from the same sort of thing, but we don't have the documentation that we need.
Professor, a study published earlier this year in the Journal of Biological Conservation found that 40% of all insect species are threatened with extinction. This is to the point that you made earlier in our conversation. Is there a way to protect both crops and insects, and specifically bees, at the same time? Can we have the best of both worlds?
I believe we can, but it means that we have to have a new policy in regard of how these chemicals are used in the agricultural and forest landscapes. It's a matter of really not using them in a prophylactic sense, i.e. putting them down in case there should be a pest problem, but putting them down when there is a pest problem, which means putting scouts out into the field to say, okay, we've got a hot spot here that needs to be addressed in order to protect a particular crop at a particular time.
So doing a little more legwork in order to save the bee population seems pretty simple. Peter Kevin, thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Ben. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to subscribe here.
And you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.